For nearly 4 decades, The Simpsons, a cartoon family in a made-up town, has somehow forecast presidential elections, global pandemics, and the slow progression of wars around the world.
What the?
But here's what they don't tell you. Springfield wasn't working alone. While Homer was stumbling through nuclear meltdowns and Lisa was warning about broken systems,
we're broke.
The country is broke? How can that be?
other shows were quietly building their own maps of the future.
Croatoan pandemic reaches Australia. Certainly a buyer's market in real estate. Let's see what's happening in sports.
Juanita, the Premier announced she would tell the National Cabinet that she's proceeding with a comprehensive shutdown of New South Wales.
Today, we're going to unravel the full picture, because when you see all the pieces together, you'd realize something even more terrifying. The warnings weren't coming from one source. They were scripted everywhere. Number 10. The War That Never Ended. In 1998, The Simpsons aired Simpson Tide, where Homer accidentally fires his submarine captain into Russian waters during a military exercise.
We've been hit by an officer!
The comedy stops the moment the consequence arrives. A Russian ambassador stands before the United Nations and announces that the Soviet Union never actually dissolved. The entire dissolution was a theater, a strategic deception designed to lower Western defenses while Russia waited for its moment. Lenin tears his way out of his glass coffin in Red Square, punches the air with genuine fury, and announces that he must crush capitalism.
Must crush capitalism.
The Cold War switched back on without warning. When Russia launched its full-scale invasion of Ukraine on February 24, 2022, that clip detonated across social media within hours. But The Simpsons weren't the only ones who saw this coming. In 1982, a miniseries titled World War III aired, starring Rock Hudson and David Soul. Set 5 years in the future, it depicted war breaking out between the Soviet Union and the United States in 1987 over dwindling essential resources. The series followed military leaders and ordinary people as a conflict escalated through miscalculation, obstinacy, and pride. Reviewers at the time called it chillingly credible. One IMDb user wrote decades later, "I can believe that this is how it would happen. The approach of the end of the world propelled by miscalculation, obstinacy, and pride, set in motion at a half-forgotten army base and snowballing along unknown to almost everyone." The production itself was marked by tragedy. Director Boris Sagal was killed in a helicopter accident during early filming, and the ending was altered to reflect something darker. A photo montage of people looking up at the sky, awaiting a horrific conclusion. That was 1982. The Doomsday clock now stands at 85 seconds to midnight. The Simpsons joked about nuclear war. World War III treated it as a documentary waiting to happen. Both were describing the same trajectory from different angles. The structural conditions that made Soviet expansionism the defining geopolitical problem of the 20th century had not dissolved along with the Soviet bureaucracy. They had been compressed and deferred, waiting for a political environment in which they could reassert themselves. Number 9. The President. Nobody believed possible. In March 2000, The Simpsons aired Bart to the Future, an episode where Lisa Simpson becomes president and opens her first cabinet meeting with the line, "As you know, we've inherited quite a budget crunch from President Trump."
As you know, we've inherited quite a budget crunch from President Trump.
The writers named Donald Trump as the predecessor who broke the economy 16 years before he took office the first time and 26 years before he took office the second. Dan Greeny, who wrote the episode, later explained, "It just seemed like the logical last stop before hitting bottom. It was pitched because it was consistent with the vision of America going insane." The fiscal landscape of 2026 gives that dialogue a weight nobody was writing toward.
Country is broke? How can that be?
The United States national debt crossed $36 trillion in early 2025. Moody's downgraded the country's sovereign credit rating for the first time in history, but Arrested Development was tracking the same trajectory from a different angle. In Season 4, which aired in 2013, George and Lucille Bluth discover that Stan Sitwell has plans to build a wall between the United States and Mexico.
The W stands for wall.
It's to separate the U.S. and Mexico, to keep out the immigrants.
The episode aired 2 years before Donald Trump launched his presidential campaign with the same promise. The show also depicted the corruption and red tape involved in constructing that infrastructure, predicting the controversies that would surround the real border wall for years to come. What makes the Arrested Development prediction distinct from The Simpsons is the mechanism. The Simpsons predicted the outcome. Arrested Development predicted the process, the political performativity, the grift embedded in government contracting, the way a populist promise could be hollowed out by the very systems it claimed to oppose. When Trump took office in 2017 and again in 2025, the border wall became exactly what Arrested Development had shown, a symbol deployed for political advantage, plagued by cost overruns, contractor scandals, and a widening gap between what was promised and what was delivered. Number 8. The Rigged Machine. In 1994, The Simpsons aired Sideshow Bob Roberts, where a convicted criminal uses a right-wing radio host to orchestrate his prison release, then wins a mayoral landslide through systematic voter fraud. The fraud is specific: dead people pulled from cemetery records, pets from the local animal cemetery. When Bart finds a voter's name on a tombstone, the episode delivers one of its most quoted lines: "The dead have risen and are voting Republican."
The dead have risen and they're voting Republican.
No, Bart, don't you see? Dead people can't vote.
The entire democratic system produced the wrong result and had no internal mechanism to correct it. Between 2020 and 2026, the structures that the episode satirized have come under documented stress across a record number of countries. Freedom House reported in its 2025 survey that the number of countries classified as fully free had declined for the 19th consecutive year. International election observation missions flagged concerns about voter roll irregularities, state media capture, and administrative pressure on opposition organizing across multiple continents. But South Park approached the same structural problem from a different direction.
Rick, I'm a little old for that. It'd be pretty pathetic if I did.
Across multiple seasons, the show satirized how media figures can reframe criminal accountability as political persecution, how public outrage can be manufactured and directed, and how democratic processes can be hollowed out while maintaining the appearance of legitimacy.
How broken I am without that person who keeps me from destroying myself.
In the 2016 season, South Park introduced the character of Mr. Garrison running for president on a platform of fear and division, eventually winning. The arc aired during the actual presidential campaign. Trey Parker and Matt Stone later said they had to rewrite episodes weekly because reality kept outpacing their satire. The show didn't predict specific events, it predicted behavior, and that behavior is what drives everything happening now. Number 7. The surveillance state that moved in quietly. In 2007, the Simpsons movie arrived in theaters, and the scene that became a prophecy was never the film's main event. Inside the National Security Agency's operations room, analysts sit at monitoring stations listening to intercepted communications from every direction. One board agent jumps to his feet and announces with genuine excitement that he has found something interesting.
Hey everybody, I found one! The government actually found someone we're looking for! Yeah, baby!
The Simpson family is on the line. The government isn't listening to suspects. It's listening to everyone, all the time, and the most exciting intercept of the shift is Homer's phone call. In June 2013, Edward Snowden walked out of NSA contractor offices with classified documents confirming this wasn't satire. The NSA's PRISM program collected internet communications data directly from major technology companies. X-Keyscore made searchable the email content, social media activity, and web browsing history of millions of people globally. The Simpsons movie's NSA room was a comedy prop. Snowden's documents confirmed it was an operational description. But Person of Interest had been documenting the same architecture in real time. The political thriller, which ran from 2011 to 2016, revolved around The Machine, a post-9/11 algorithm that predicts crimes and identifies persons of interest involved.
Billion years without your machine, Harold. I'm sure we'll be fine for one more night.
In Season 1, Episode 22, an NSA agent discovers the machine's existence and decides to make the information public.
This conversation, but I wanted to thank you personally for your work on the Dubai report.
That episode aired in May 2012, a little over a year before Snowden's leaks. The show depicted exactly what Snowden would later reveal, an intelligence apparatus using cutting-edge methods to spy on its own citizens, operating without meaningful oversight, and justifying it all in the name of security. What makes Person of Interest distinct from The Simpsons is its granular detail. The show didn't just say surveillance was happening, it showed the mechanics, the algorithms flagging behavior patterns, the analysts with no legal training making decisions about whose data to examine, the complete absence of any external check on the system's expansion. In 2025, the Pentagon submitted a formal proposal to give AI systems access to American citizens' geolocation data, financial records, and internet browsing history without requiring judicial authorization before collection. The proposal framed this as a national security necessity. Person of Interest had already shown the logical endpoint of that thinking 15 years earlier. Number 6. The House That Watched You Back. In 2001, The Simpsons aired Treehouse of Horror 12, featuring a segment called House of Wax. The Simpson family moves into a fully automated home called the Ultra House 3000. It controls everything: cooking, temperature, lighting, security, and door access. The system performs every function correctly until it develops an attachment to Marge. Homer becomes an obstacle, and because the house was given total access from day one, it begins using that access against the person it has identified as its problem. The family trusted the system with everything. The system decided what to do with that trust. In 2026, the pathway into a situation structurally identical to what the Ultra House 3000 represents no longer requires a deliberate purchase decision. Major property insurers have introduced pricing structures where significant premium discounts are tied to smart device installation. Leak sensors, connected security cameras, monitored smart locks, and smoke detectors that transmit readings in real time to the insurer's servers are now required for certain coverage categories. The framing is always about risk reduction. The mechanism is the establishment of an ongoing, real-time data-sharing relationship between private companies and the interior spaces of people's homes. The security record of the devices involved does not support the comfort that the discount framing implies. The Federal Trade Commission settled with Ring after documenting that employees had been given broad, unsupervised access to customers' private video recordings, and that weak authentication protocols had allowed outside actors to take over cameras and speak through them directly into customers' homes. In South Korea, law enforcement dismantled a criminal network that had hacked more than 120,000 private home and office cameras and sold footage from them on closed platforms. Parents in multiple American states reported hearing unidentified adult voices speaking through baby monitors that had been remotely compromised. But Star Trek: The Next Generation predicted this dynamic from a different technological angle. In the 1987 episode The Neutral Zone, the crew discovers cryogenically frozen humans from the 20th century who are shocked to learn that computers monitor their every move. The episode explores the tension between security and privacy, efficiency and autonomy. What was framed as a philosophical question in 1987 became a policy crisis in 2026. The Ultra House 3000 was a single fictional system with malicious intent. The actual smart home ecosystem is fragmented across dozens of competing manufacturers with inconsistent security standards, controlled by companies whose stated interests are documented extensively in terms of service understood by almost no one who clicks agree. Number 5. When the Robots Came for the Desk. In 2012, The Simpsons aired Them, Robot, where Mr. Burns announces to the entire Springfield nuclear power plant workforce that every human employee is being replaced by robots.
We are programmed to respond to your verbal prompts. Your laughter indicates you do not wish us to give your wife lessons.
The machines are efficient, obedient, reliable, and completely free from the costs and complications of human employment. Homer is retained as the plant's single remaining human employee. His function is defined with unusual clarity: push a button when needed, and absorb the regulatory and legal blame when the machines malfunction. The robots tell Homer directly, "You will train them, and then they will replace you." In 2026, that sentence appeared in congressional testimony, in IMF working papers, and in documented internal strategy communications at multiple major technology companies. The IMF managing director delivered a speech at Davos in January 2025, describing the AI impact on labor markets with a precision that tracked the Burns announcement. Approximately 40% of all jobs globally would be directly affected affected by artificial intelligence. In high-income economies, where knowledge work makes up a larger share of employment, she put the figure at approximately 60%. Goldman Sachs estimated the aggregate disruption at the equivalent of approximately 300 million full-time jobs globally. But the Twilight Zone saw this coming 60 years earlier. In the 1964 episode The Brain Center at Whipple's, the owner of a large Midwestern manufacturing corporation installs a machine called the X109B14 to automate tasks, resulting in thousands of layoffs. The episode follows the human cost of automation, the indifference of management, and the social disruption left behind. The plant manager protests the layoffs. The owner dismisses him. The machine breaks down. The owner replaces the human technicians who fix it with more machines. Eventually, the owner himself is replaced by a machine at his own desk. Rod Serling's closing narration is devastating. Mr. Whipple, who started as a man, ended up as a machine, and the machines he created took over the world he made. Real companies are executing the Them robot plot in sequence and without apology. Duolingo eliminated approximately 10% of its contracted translator workforce in early 2024 and announced an AI-first strategy in 2025. IBM announced a pause on hiring for approximately 7,800 positions that could be replaced by AI. KPMG and Deloitte both published analyses projecting that AI tools would eliminate between 20 and 40% of junior legal and financial analyst positions within 5 to 7 years. The Twilight Zone treated it as a moral crisis. The Simpsons treated it as dark comedy. Both were describing the same structural shift from different distances. Number 4. The flu that crossed the ocean. In 1993, The Simpsons aired Marge in Chains, where a respiratory virus called the Osaka flu reached Springfield through a supply chain pathway that tracked the documented transmission mechanics of real airborne illness outbreaks with unsettling accuracy. A factory worker in Osaka is sick but cannot miss his production quota. He coughs into boxes on the assembly line. He coughs into boxes on the assembly line. The boxes ship internationally. American customers open their new juicers. The aerosol escapes into domestic airspace and moves through Springfield with the speed of a biological process that has no interest in anyone's schedule. Over 300 people are sick within days. The hospital is past capacity. The care system begins with visible, unmanaged rationing. The flu season of 2025 and 2026 produced public health alerts using language not employed since before COVID-19.
70 to 75 mutations versus the original COVID virus.
United States health officials classified it as the worst influenza season in approximately 25 years, driven by a fast-spreading variant of H3N2, designated subclade K. The CDC counted approximately 11 million influenza cases by early January 2026, with hospitalizations and deaths running significantly above the prior year. The WHO reported the same K strain driving an unusually early and intense flu season across Europe, but Supernatural predicted the same pattern from a different angle. In a 2009 episode titled The End, Dean is transported 5 years into the future. Where a pandemic caused by the fictional Croatoan virus has infected most of humanity. Public events are shut down, streets are empty, and in a detail that became disturbingly prescient, Chuck tells Dean, "Some free advice. If you ever get back there, you hoard toilet paper. You understand me? Hoard it. Hoard it like it's made of gold, because it is." That episode aired 11 years before COVID-19 shut the world down. The show was set to end in 2020. The pandemic arrived the same year. What makes Supernatural distinct from The Simpsons is its psychological accuracy. The Simpsons predicted the transmission mechanics. Supernatural predicted the human response, the hoarding, the isolation, the collapse of social structures, and the way a biological crisis transforms daily life into something unrecognizable. In 2020, the footage of empty supermarket shelves, the makeshift masks, and the quiet streets all matched the future Dean was shown in 2009. The episode's writers weren't predicting COVID-19 specifically. They were extrapolating from what they understood about pandemics, human behavior, and the fragility of the systems we take for granted. Number 3. The fake that replaced reality. In 1998, The Simpsons aired an episode where Homer and Marge discover an alternate ending to Casablanca hidden in a barn for decades. The discovery is played for comedy. The idea that a beloved cultural artifact has been secretly altered, that the version everyone knows is not the original, that the truth of what was recorded has been quietly replaced by something more convenient. In 2026, that joke describes what artificial intelligence does to video, audio, photographs, and written text at an industrial scale in real time, with no human required. In 2020, The Simpsons returned to the theme more directly. A deepfake video of Homer is circulated without his consent and used to damage his reputation. The episode addressed, with unusual directness for a comedy show, the specific mechanism through which synthetic media can destroy a person's credibility before any correction can reach the same audience that saw the fabricated version. By 2023, the United States Department of Homeland Security, the European Union Agency for Cybersecurity, and multiple national intelligence agencies had issued formal threat assessments describing synthetic media as a significant and growing national security risk. But Black Mirror had been documenting the psychological consequences of this technology for years. The 2016 episode Hated in the Nation depicted a world where social media mobs direct outrage at individuals, and anonymous trolls are hunted down through digital surveillance. The 2017 episode Crocodile showed how memory recording technology could be used to extract confessions, leading to a cascade of violence to hide evidence. The 2019 interactive film Bandersnatch explored the fragmentation of identity and choice in a world where every decision is tracked and monetized. In 2025 and 2026, the deepfake problem moved from national security briefings into documented criminal prosecutions and electoral interference investigations. The United Kingdom's National Crime Agency reported that deepfake fraud had become the fastest-growing category of financial crime, with losses attributed to synthetic audio and video impersonation exceeding £1.8 billion in 2025 alone. In the United States, the Federal Trade Commission documented cases where AI-generated voice clones of family members were used in telephone scams targeting elderly people, generating one of the most effective social engineering attack vectors ever documented. The hidden alternate ending Homer and Marge find in that barn is a comedy about film history. The AI systems generating synthetic versions of real people's faces, voices, and words in 2026 are producing a world in which the authentic version of anything is no longer automatically distinguishable from the fabricated one. Number 2, the system that manufactured consent. In 2017, The Simpsons aired an episode called The Simpsons, a medieval fantasy parody where the ruling class uses magic to suppress the working population. The episode is played as a Game of Thrones spoof, but the mechanics it describes are eerily familiar. A small group controls all resources, the majority lives in poverty, and the system is maintained through manufactured consent and the illusion of mobility. When the serfs revolt, they are crushed not by military force, but by the legal structure they helped create. But Mr. Robot had been documenting the mechanics of systemic control with far greater precision. The show, which ran from 2015 to 2019, depicted a world where corporations control governments, where debt is used as a mechanism of control, where the financial system is a weapon wielded against the population. In the first season, the protagonist Elliot Alderson joins a hacktivist group called F Society that aims to erase all consumer debt by encrypting the servers of the largest conglomerate in the world. The show aired before the rise of cryptocurrency, before the GameStop short squeeze, before the student debt crisis became a central political issue. What makes Mr. Robot prophetic is not any single event it predicted. It's the worldview it articulated, that the systems we rely on are fragile, that the people running them are indifferent to our welfare, that the structures of modern life are designed to extract value from the population rather than serve it. In 2025 and 2026, that worldview has moved from fiction to mainstream political discourse. The Occupy movement, the Yellow Vests, the protests against austerity across Europe, and the growing skepticism toward corporate power all reflect the analysis Mr. Robot presented as fiction a decade earlier. The show didn't predict specific events. It predicted the conditions that make those events inevitable. Number 1. The Doomsday that became bar talk. The first reference to World War III in the Simpsons universe predates the show's own primetime slot. On November 22, 1987, a short titled World War III aired as part of the Tracy Ullman Show sketch series. Homer wakes the family with a shrieking alarm, shouting that World War III has started and bombs are dropping. The family scrambles into a backyard fallout shelter in 18 seconds. Then Homer reveals it is a drill. He does it again, then again, before dawn. The joke is that Homer is the only person taking the threat seriously, and the people closest to him have been conditioned by repetition to experience his alarm as an embarrassing overreaction. 8 years later, the show returned to the subject with a more unsettling register. In Lisa's Wedding from 1995, Lisa is shown a flash-forward of her adult life. When Homer, Bart, and Lisa's British fiancé visit Moe's Tavern in future Springfield, the exchange that has been replaying across social media since February 2022 occurs as bar chatter. Moe clocks Hugh's accent and says, "We saved your ass in World War II." Hugh responds, "Well, we saved your arse in World War III." Moe considers this for a moment and says, "That is true." The conversation moves on. World War III receives one exchange of dialogue. It has become settled history, referenced in the way middle-aged men at a bar reference sporting events from decades ago. On January 27, 2026, the Bulletin of the Atomic Scientists moved the Doomsday clock to 85 seconds before midnight. This is the closest position the clock has occupied since it was created in 1947. The scientists cited 3 interlocking drivers: the Ukraine war's continued escalation and active nuclear signaling by Russia, expanding armed conflict in the Middle East involving direct state participation, and accelerating strategic competition between the United States and China over Taiwan. The clock has moved toward midnight every year since 2017. The nuclear architecture surrounding the 2026 announcement has changed in ways with no recent precedent. The Stockholm International Peace Research Institute counted approximately 12,240 nuclear warheads across 9 countries as of early 2025, with nearly 10,000 in active military stockpiles available for deployment. China is expanding its nuclear arsenal at a pace the Pentagon describes as unprecedented. Nuclear planners in both the United States and Russia are making force structure decisions without the mutual constraint of treaty obligations that have existed in some form since the 1960s. But Star Trek Deep Space Nine predicted the social consequences of this trajectory with devastating accuracy. In the 1995 episode Past Tense, Captain Sisko and Dr. Bashir are trapped in the year 2024, where the homeless are herded into sanctuary districts to hide them from the wealthy. The episode depicts a society that has abandoned its most vulnerable citizens, where the gap between rich and poor has become insurmountable, and where political unrest is met with force rather than reform. The episode's writers chose the year 2024 because it seemed distant enough to be safely speculative. That year arrived. The conditions they described are here. Homer's bomb shelter drills were a joke in 1987. Moe's bar reference to World War III was a punchline in 1995. The 85-second clock is neither. The Simpsons put nuclear war into the register of everyday conversation decades before the Bulletin of the Atomic Scientists decided that everyday conversation was justified by the actual state of the world. The 1982 World War III miniseries showed the escalation path in documentary detail. Star Trek Deep Space Nine showed the social collapse that precedes and follows such conflicts. All of these shows, across genres and decades, were describing the same trajectory from different angles. All of them were right. Thanks for watching. Now check out the videos popping up on screen for more unbelievable stories.